Welcome back. You're listening to the discussion, Technology Risk Management, Driving Federal Mission, Business and Risk Decisions with Real-Time Data, sponsored by Tanium on Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guests today are Jeff Schilling, the Chief Information Officer for the National Cancer Institute at the National Institutes of Health, NICOLE PURI, the Chief Risk Officer for the Bureau of Fiscal Service at the Treasury Department, Ted Okada, the Chief Technology Officer at FEMA in the Homeland Security Department, Major General Maria Barrett, the Commander of Army Network Command, and Ralph KAHN, the Vice President of Federal for Tanium. Right before break, we heard Jeff talk a little bit about data and this idea of really having some modeling and having the data to really drive decision making. And really, that's what we're talking about when we talk about technology risk management, the data piece. So let me turn to Ted for a second. Ted, give me a sense of FEMA as a data organization. In fact, I guess we're all data organizations now in all regards. How are you all at FEMA using the data to drive decisions, and how do you make sure you have the right data to drive those best decisions?
Yeah, so I just want to give kudos to NICOLE PURI in the previous segment, because she was spot on when she said, ultimately decisions lead to outcomes. And just want to riff on that because in effect, that's absolutely correct. And so data, and analytics, specifically the analytic products. And I think as General Barrett mentioned, that these products have to be, sort of continuous diagnostic, continuous monitoring, continuous delivery. They can't be sort of static products. So that's really central. I think what Jeff mentioned in the previous segment as well is how do these data products or analytical products produce scenarios or effectively a narrative? Because if you can't believe the narrative, you don't have trust. And if you don't have trust, that's really the coin of the realm in terms of being able to evoke change. Because in fact, CIO or IT organizations don't exist in a vacuum. So Ralph made a previous point in the previous segment that, how do you actually get change management? And often for IT groups, it's not a smooth process. There are often cost offsets. There's almost a zigzag pattern where you do a little bit there to modernize in one area, you've got to do a cost offset in another. And because in each of those cases, I have to build trust with my stakeholders. IT just does not sit in a vacuum. So in order to generate the outcomes, we're basically supporting our mission partners within FEMA. And until they see results in their decision-making, how data analytical products actually enhance those decisions. And in fact, they're making better decisions that lead to better measurable outcomes for our citizen survivors, then it just doesn't work. So I just thought that the previous responders were just really spot on in how they articulate the problem.
One of the things that I think, Ted, you bring up is very interesting is that trust issue, but it's also this idea of if you're giving people dirty data or bad data, then the decisions are going to be bad or dirty or maybe not as good as you hope. I'll just open it up to anyone on the group here. Walk me through, are there ways to ensure your data is as clean as possible, and then that can lead to better decisions?
So, one of the things that we're noticing in the financial world, when you want to provide data of high trust, you audit. And that audit process takes an awful long time, but it allows people to have a high degree of trust that the data you've provided them to make a decision with is good. In the IT world, there's very rarely that audit step. In many cases, what we see is the data you get is from multiple sources and is conflicting. And one of the strengths of many of the CIOs that I've met is being able to sort through that various data and figure out, okay, this is the one that's good and this is the one that isn't. And so, I've also often wondered what it would be like if many organizations could put a really fast auditing process in place using whatever technology for the IT data they get, so they have a better idea very quickly, is the information I'm getting good or not and reliable? And if it's not, why not?
Ralph, we should open that up to our friends on the panel in the CIO world. So Major General Barrett, I know you're not a quote unquote CIO, but walk me through how you guys deal with data, because you have a lot. And if it's not good, that can obviously have some huge consequences.
Yeah, so I would say this is great conversation. I would say at a certain point in time, I would have called parts of our system. We had a lot of data, but it was falling on the floor, and we weren't using it. And my predecessor stood up a data science directorate here in order to deal with this issue and start to get some familiarity with making data-driven decisions. But as we have continued down this road and continued to mature, one of the things that really has come out, and we talk about it all the time, but now I'm a disciple of it. You do need somebody in the chief data officer, chief data management role to really be thinking about how you're going to curate that data, how you're going to assess it for accuracy. There might be periods of time where our analytics will rely on, I'll just say 10 data points in order to give you an outcome or something that will drive a decision. And if you're only getting 9, now your confidence level still is pretty high. But if you're only getting 5 because some of the sensors are offline or the data is old and you're making a decision about, well, how old should this data be in order to drive a decision? That's going to have a range. And if you don't have somebody dedicated to helping you think through that, not just the guys who are going to develop the analytics on the data, but somebody who understands that, your decision making off this really sophisticated effort that you put together is going to be flawed. And so this is where we're at right now in terms of making better decisions with the data that we have.
Nicole, jump in here for a second and walk me through the data piece. I know the Bureau of Fiscal Service has been out in front in many regards with having, for instance, someone in your position, chief risk officer. They also, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're one of the first ones to have a chief data officer of sorts. And you mentioned the data governance piece. How are you ensuring that data is in the right place at the right time to make those right decisions when it comes to risk?
Yeah, I would agree with Major General that one of the biggest things we've done is to hire a chief data officer, and that has really made a big difference. Now, because we weren't required to do that since we're not, we're a Bureau of Mean Treasury, but we felt it was important because data is so critical, and we are tasked with making public a lot of data, usaspending.gov and so on. So just that, putting even aside the internal usage of data, that making public that external data is also very important. So we felt having a chief data officer was very important. And I think that, I'd love to say that we were out in front. I don't know that we were, but so we're still, I think, figuring out, how we're going to ensure that data is up to date and accurate and timely and reliable and all of those things. There's a very strong recognition that those things are needed. And so I think one of the ways that we have looked to begin to tackle that is by having a data governance council, which I'm sure many agencies are looking into also. And I think that will be, so it'll be a little bit of a learning process for us to figure out for our agency what the issues are around getting our data to a point where it can be used reliably. We are, though, very forward-looking in being data-driven in our decision-making. And so we have already started looking at ways that we can use data to make decisions. We have a whole set of dashboards around our decision on when to return to the office. And those are fed by data daily, and we look at it weekly and make decisions on it. So things like that are how we're looking to continue to move forward in that space.
Hey, Jason, I think one thing that would be a good thing to state, and I think General Barrett said that, you initially start with data collection, and all this data sits on the floor because you got nobody to look at it. You don't know the quality, and the reality is you don't have the leadership that's going to look at that data and make a decision. So what's the sense of giving them a report? They're not used to making a data-driven decision. So, one of the things that we've moved to, if we go back a little bit just to say operational IT, is that we started collecting data to make a decision, and then that data was clearly biased based upon the decision that the that the user who was putting it all together wanted. And so we've been really trying to look at simplifying, because we have so much data. We're trying to look at it and simplify. Well, what decision are we trying to make? What are our 3 decisions? And if I could say one as an example, I would say, how redundant do we need our data storage to be? Right now, we have a high level of redundancy. And then right away the question came in, we don't really have a good picture of our data. This is scientific data, clinical data, administrative data. Sure, there's some record schedules that we can look at, but what's the value of the data? So then I think that started to kick off a much larger analysis, a strategic plan around, we need to get a handle on, because we're spending so much money storing all this data, we need to get a handle on at least binning this data into very valuable, was valuable at some point, questionable value, really probably not valuable. And then we can buy the storage or the redundancies appropriately. So I think there's that cycle of data collection that you will get to, but to simplify it, because we certainly have data management projects that are taking years. And then I'm like, what a question are we even trying to answer with all this stuff? And so if you were just to say, what are you trying to answer? In this case, how much redundancy do we have in our data storage on premise? And then how can we integrate the cloud into that? Okay, let's start collecting data for that. So I think that's been helpful. And the risk part is a big part, because it's mostly around failure, right? Will the data fail? Will the system fail? Will a user accidentally delete a whole bunch of data and we need to restore it? Or will we have like a catastrophe that we need some of this data online for? So again, I think it comes back to that scenario planning, but it also helps us with the what's just our failure rate of these arrays or whatever. So I think there's that piece of it, that if you just look at what are we trying to answer and collect data for those answers, then you're going to find a lot more other things you want to be able to answer to.
Ralph, let me bring you into this conversation, because I think one of the challenges that agencies continue to face is exactly what we've heard from the panel so far. What are you seeing from your government clients? Are they starting to understand both the value of the data, but even more importantly, where they're getting their data from, and they can say, okay, is this accurate? Is it timely? What are some of the things you're starting to see from your government clients?
I think taking data science seriously is clearly something that is at the top of mind for most information technology and security professionals these days. I think everybody understands both the criticality of getting accurate data and then matching the time cycle of your data to the risk or the decision you're trying to make, right? If I'm making a asset management decision, am I using the right software? Yeah, if I have 90-day-old data, that's not going to kill me, right? If I'm trying to assess if an adversary is in my network, I might want something a little more like 90 seconds, not 90 days. And so understanding the accuracy and the timeliness, being able to use data science to go back and validate and audit the data that you have, and do it quickly or in a time frame that matches the decision you're making. I'm beginning to see those best practices adopted across many different places in the federal government, and it's very, very encouraging, because I think what a lot of organizations have discovered is when they put that discipline in place, they're cleaning out kind of years of cobwebs, right? Decisions have been made this way, and there's false rigor, and the answers we've gotten haven't been optimal because we've operated on bad data. And now that we're going through and operationalizing the discipline to make that timely and accurate, a whole bunch of different decisions are getting made, and that's leading to ultimately better outcomes for the citizen or the warfighter or whoever your mission partners are.
And I think that's really the end result here, the better outcomes. And I think that's something we're going to look at in the next segment. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll continue our conversation. You're listening to the discussion, Technology Risk Management, Driving Federal Mission, Business and Risk Decisions with Real-Time Data, sponsored by Tanium on Federal News Network.